Think about something simple, like watching a kid count on their fingers or tying shoelaces. Seems pretty basic, right? But what if those physical actions, how our eyes and hands connect, are actually, well, a really big key to doing well in school? Maybe even more than just IQ. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something called visuomotor integration, VMI for short. It's this really interesting coordination between what we see and how we move our bodies. It's fundamental for so much, from using a fork, like I said, to even solving math problems. So our mission here is to unpack the huge role VMI plays in a student's learning from day one, being ready for kindergarten, right up through succeeding in specific subjects. We'll look at how it's measured, what the latest research tells us, and importantly, what it all means for you.
Yeah, and we'll be covering quite a bit of ground, different school stages, how things like cognitive ability fit in, even learning disabilities. It's pretty wide-ranging.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, you can find all the research, all the sources we talk about today over at yourtherapysource.com. Just search for visual motor integration and academics.
Okay, so let's get into it. We've said VMI, but what is it exactly? What's happening there?
Right. So visual motor integration at its heart is just how well your brain coordinates what you're seeing with what you're doing physically. Think of it like your eyes telling your hands or maybe your whole body what to do and how to do it.
Okay.
It's that connection, that seamless flow between the visual input and the motor output.
Can you give some examples, like everyday stuff and maybe school stuff?
Sure. So everyday things, using utensils like you mentioned, or tying shoelaces definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Using scissors to cut along a line is a classic one. And then bridging that to academics. Well, counting with fingers is a great example. The eyes see the objects or the problem, the fingers perform the action. And maybe the most obvious one is handwriting. You see the letter shape, and then your hand has to execute that complex movement to copy it. It's all about using that visual info to guide your actions. That makes a lot of sense. So, okay, here's the big question for me. How does that skill, coordinating eyes and hands, actually impact how well a kid does in, say, math or reading? We talk so much about IQ or maybe executive functions like planning and focus. Where does VMI fit in? Is it separate?
Yeah, that's exactly where it gets really interesting. VMI plays a really significant role, often more than people realize. It's strongly linked to just being ready for school in the first place.
Yeah.
And studies actually show it can predict overall academic success down the line.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Think about the skills needed in a classroom. Following visual instructions, concentrating on a worksheet, even just holding a pencil correctly. Those overlap heavily with VMI skills. So if a child is struggling with that basic visual motor stuff, it can definitely cause problems in their learning.
So if it's that important, maybe foundational.
Yeah.
How do we even know where a child stands? How do schools or therapists measure VMI?
That's a key point. There are specific ways to assess it. Usually it involves tasks where a child has to copy drawings or geometric shapes. These shapes get progressively more complex. How accurately the child can copy them tells us a lot about how well their visual system and motor system are talking to each other. There are some common tests you might hear about, like the Beery VMI, that's the Beery Developmental Test of Visual Motor Integration, or the Bender-Gestalt test. They're designed to measure precisely that integration.
Right, copying those shapes. I think I remember doing something like that. Okay, so bringing it back to the classroom subjects, math and reading. Where does VMI really show up? Are the links clear?
With math, the connection is actually pretty strong, and it starts early.
Okay.
Think about counting fingers again, or learning to write numbers, or even lining up numbers for an addition problem. That spatial aspect is visual motor. And there's research showing that using hands-on tools, manipulative like blocks or beads, really helps kids understand math concepts better. That's VMI in action, linking the visual and the physical.
Makes sense. What about reading? Is it the same kind of link?
With reading, it's maybe a bit less direct than with math, but yeah, there are still significant correlations found in studies. The main way VMI seems to influence reading is actually through handwriting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when kids are learning to write, they have to pay really close attention to the visual form of letters, then they physically make those shapes. That whole process seems to help cement the recognition of those letters and words when they see them later in a book. It's especially important for younger kids just starting out with literacy.
Okay, this is fascinating. We often think IQ is, the main driver for school success. So how does VMI fit with that? Is it just part of general intelligence, or does it add something extra, something unique?
That's a great question. And the research suggests VMI actually brings something unique to the table, independent of general IQ.
Really?
Yes. Some studies have found VMI can predict math achievement even after you account for the child's IQ score,
Wow,
which means working on VMI skills could potentially boost math performance regardless of their overall cognitive ability level.
that's huge.
It is. Now, for reading, the picture is a bit less clear. Once you factor in IQ, the independent link between VMI and reading sometimes weakens. But for math, it seems to hold up more strongly.
So this isn't just theory. You mentioned studies. There was a big recent one, a meta-analysis. Tell us about that. What were they looking at?
Right, this was a really significant piece of research, a multi-level meta-analysis. Basically, they gathered data from hundreds of previous studies on VMI and academics.
Okay, pooling everything together.
Exactly, and it was really the first time anyone had systematically looked at how VMI relates to school success across different ages, early childhood, elementary, secondary, while also considering IQ and the presence of disabilities.
So what was the main goal?
The main goal was to get a clear picture. How strong is the link between VMI and reading? How strong is it for math? Does it change as kids get older? And crucially, how does it relate to general cognitive skills like IQ? They wanted to highlight why assessing VMI early is important and maybe figure out which kids might benefit most from help specifically targeting these skills.
Okay, so after looking at all those studies, pulling all that data,
hmm
what did they find? What were the main takeaways?
Well, they found pretty consistent, moderate links between VMI and both math and reading skills. So generally, kids with better VMI tend to do better in those subjects.
Moderlings, okay.
Yeah, the correlation was around 0.39 for math and 0.34 for reading, if you like the numbers. But what's interesting is that these connections were stronger for younger kids.
Ah, so it matters more early on.
It seems so, especially for reading. The idea is that younger kids rely more on those VMI-heavy strategies, like using their fingers to count, or the very physical act of learning to form letters when they write.
That makes sense.
Another really key finding related to cognitive abilities and disabilities. The study found the relationship between VMI and math was even stronger for students with intellectual disabilities or those with lower IQ scores.
So VMI might be even more important for kids facing certain challenges.
That's what it suggests. It might be a particularly critical area for support for those students. So overall, the study really reinforces VMI as a useful indicator for school readiness, especially for the little ones and those who might struggle cognitively.
Okay, but you mentioned correlation. That doesn't necessarily mean VMI causes better scores, right?
Exactly. That's a crucial caveat. It's a correlation, not necessarily causation. It could be that both strong VMI skills and good academic performance stem from some other underlying factor, perhaps like those executive functions, attention, working memory that are developing alongside everything else.
Right, okay. So putting this all together, thinking bigger picture, what are the implications here for teachers, for therapists, maybe even for parents? And where does the research go next?
Well, for educators and therapists, I think the big message is the importance of paying attention to VMI skills early on. Identifying kids who might be struggling with these visual motor tasks and providing support could really help boost their readiness for school and their later success.
So early screening, maybe?
Potentially, yes. And also tailoring how we teach. Knowing that VMI's impact might differ for kids with different abilities or disabilities allows for more personalized strategies, which is always a good thing.
And for future research.
Definitely need more research on older students. How does VMI play out in secondary school, especially with more complex math? We don't know as much about that. And critically, we need more studies focused on interventions. What actually works to improve VMI skills? Especially for young children and those in special education, we need effective strategies. But the overall significance is pretty clear now. VMI is a substantial factor in math and reading across school years, and understanding its nuances can really help us tailor support effectively.
Okay, so let's sum this up. Visuomotor integration, VMI. It's clearly more than just hand-eye coordination for sports or crafts. It seems to be a really key foundational skill that influences how kids develop academically, especially when they're young, and maybe even more so for kids facing certain learning challenges. It's definitely something worth paying attention to. So here's something to think about as we wrap up. Given how wide-ranging VMI's impact seems to be, what everyday things, activities, toys, maybe even classroom setups might be helping build these skills, or maybe unintentionally hindering them? How can we all, parents, educators, everyone, be a bit more intentional about creating environments that really nurture these crucial visual motor abilities in students? Lots to consider there. Remember, you can find all the sources and dig deeper into the research we discussed today by visiting yourtherapysource.com and searching for visual motor integration in academics. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, and we encourage you to keep exploring and keep learning.